Imagine this. Within the first hour of a war with Iran, the lights in Tehran begin to flicker. Air defense radars go dark. Military communications collapse. Iranian commanders lose contact with their own forces. Fighter jets sit grounded, not because they were destroyed, but because their entire network has been silently blinded. And Iran doesn't even know exactly how it happened. This wouldn't begin with bombs. It would begin with invisible warfare, cyber attacks, electronic warfare, and precision strikes designed to dismantle Iran's military before most soldiers even realize the war has started. But here's the real question. Could the United States actually defeat Iran? Because Iran is not Iraq. It's not Afghanistan. It's larger, more prepared, more geographically protected, and far more capable of fighting back. And if war ever comes, the consequences would reshape the entire world, from oil prices and global trade to regional stability and great power competition. So today, we're breaking it all down. How the US would fight Iran, how Iran would respond, and who would really win. Context and background. Why Iran and the US are enemies. To understand how a war would unfold, you first need to understand why these two countries are enemies at all. Because once they were actually allies. Before 1979, Iran was ruled by a pro-Western monarch known as the Shah. The United States supported him heavily. Iran bought American weapons, hosted U.S. advisors, and acted as a key partner in the Middle East. But everything changed with the Iranian Revolution in 1979. The Shah was overthrown. A new Islamic government took power under Ayatollah Khomeini. And suddenly, Iran was no longer a U.S. ally. It became one of its fiercest opponents. Soon after, Iranian revolutionaries seized the U.S. embassy in Tehran and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. That moment permanently reshaped relations. Since then, tensions have never truly disappeared. The U.S. accuses Iran of supporting militant groups across the Middle East, threatening regional allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia, pursuing nuclear weapons capabilities. Iran, meanwhile, sees itself as resisting U.S. dominance and protecting its sovereignty. And over the decades, this rivalry has grown into one of the most dangerous geopolitical standoffs in the world. But here's something many people don't realize. Despite decades of hostility, the U.S. and Iran have never fought a full-scale direct war. Which raises an important question for you. Do you think a direct war between the U.S. and Iran is inevitable or still avoidable? Let us know in the comments, because if it ever happens, the opening phase would look very different from what most people imagine. Phase 1. The invisible opening strike. Modern wars don't begin with invasion, they begin with paralysis. The U.S. military's first objective wouldn't be to conquer Iran, it would be to blind it. This would likely begin with cyber warfare. The United States possesses some of the most advanced cyber capabilities on Earth. In fact, U.S. cyber operations have already targeted Iranian infrastructure before. One famous example is Stuxnet, a cyber weapon developed by the U.S. and Israel that sabotaged Iran's nuclear centrifuges without firing a single shot. In a full war, these cyber attacks would expand massively. Targets would include air defense systems, military command networks, power grids, communications infrastructure. The goal is simple: disrupt Iran's ability to coordinate and respond. At the same time, electronic warfare aircraft would jam Iranian radar systems. This makes it harder for Iran to detect incoming aircraft or missiles. And then comes the next step. Precision strikes, not carpet bombing, not mass destruction. Instead, carefully targeted attacks on radar installations, missile launch sites, air bases, command centers. The U.S. would use stealth aircraft like the B-2 Spirit bomber and F-35 fighter jet, planes specifically designed to evade radar. These aircraft could strike deep inside Iran while remaining extremely difficult to detect. Within hours, Iran's military would be partially blinded. But this is where things get complicated, because Iran has spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Phase 2. Iran's strategy. Survive and strike back. Iran knows it cannot defeat the United States in a traditional military confrontation, so it doesn't plan to fight that way. Instead, Iran's strategy is built on three key principles: survival, retaliation, and endurance. First, Iran has hardened its military infrastructure. Many missile bases are built underground, inside mountains. These facilities are extremely difficult to destroy, even with precision weapons. Second, Iran has thousands of ballistic missiles. These missiles can strike U.S. bases in the Middle East, oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, military installations across the region, and potentially Israel-Iran wouldn't need to defeat the U.S. military directly. It would simply need to raise the cost of war high enough to make it politically and economically unbearable. Third, Iran has something extremely powerful: geography. Iran is huge. It's nearly 4 times the size of Iraq. It has mountains, deserts, and dense urban areas, all of which make invasion extremely difficult. This is a crucial point. The United States could destroy much of Iran's military capability from the air, but occupying Iran would be an entirely different challenge. And this raises an important question for you. Do you think air power alone can win modern wars, or does victory require ground control? History gives us clues, but no easy answers. Chapter Phase 3: Control of the Persian Gulf. Now let's talk about one of the most critical battlefields, the Persian Gulf. This region carries enormous strategic importance because roughly 20% of the world's oil passes through a narrow waterway called the Strait of Hormuz. Iran sits right next to it. If war breaks out, Iran's navy would attempt to disrupt shipping using fast attack boats, naval mines, anti-ship missiles, coastal missile batteries. Iran doesn't need to defeat the U.S. Navy. It only needs to disrupt global oil flow, and even temporary disruption could send oil prices skyrocketing worldwide. The United States Navy, however, is the most powerful naval force in history. It operates aircraft carriers, essentially floating air bases, that can launch dozens of aircraft. It also has advanced destroyers equipped with missile defense systems. In a naval confrontation, the U.S. would likely dominate, but Iran would rely on asymmetric warfare, using smaller, harder-to-track attacks rather than traditional fleet battles. This kind of warfare is unpredictable and dangerous, and it could affect not just military forces, but global economies. So here's another question for you. If oil prices suddenly doubled due to war, how do you think it would affect your daily life? Because geopolitical conflicts don't stay on battlefields. They reach gas stations, grocery stores, and households around the world. Phase 4: Why the U.S. would likely avoid invasion. This is the most important part. Could the United States invade Iran? Yes. But would it? Probably not. And here's why. Invading Iran would require hundreds of thousands of troops. Iran's population is around 90 million people. For comparison, Iraq's population was about 25 million when the U.S. invaded in 2003, and even that war became long, costly, and politically difficult. Iran is bigger, more mountainous, more prepared. It also has stronger national identity and internal cohesion. An invasion would likely result in prolonged resistance, and the U.S. military knows this. Instead, America's strategy would likely focus on air superiority, missile defense, naval dominance, economic pressure, and strategic containment. The goal wouldn't be to occupy Iran. The goal would be to weaken Iran's ability to project power. This reflects a major shift in modern warfare. Victory isn't always about occupation. Sometimes it's about deterrence and strategic dominance. Phase 5: Iran's most powerful weapon. Not missiles, but time. Here's something many people overlook. Iran's greatest advantage isn't military strength. It's endurance. Iran has survived decades of sanctions, isolation, and pressure. Its strategy isn't to win quickly. It's to outlast its opponent. War fatigue matters. Political pressure matters. Public opinion matters. Iran would likely rely on regional allies and proxy groups to expand the conflict. This could stretch U.S. resources across multiple fronts, and it introduces uncertainty because wars rarely unfold exactly as planned. Which brings us to a critical question. In modern warfare, is military power alone enough, or does political endurance ultimately decide victory? History suggests both matter. Top 3. Phase 6. The global consequences. A war between the US and Iran wouldn't stay contained. It would affect the entire world. Oil prices would likely spike. Global markets would react instantly. Shipping routes could be disrupted. Regional allies would be drawn in. Major powers like China and Russia would watch closely and respond strategically. Even countries far from the Middle East would feel the impact. Energy costs, inflation, political instability. This isn't just a regional conflict. It's a global one. And this is why both sides have been cautious. Because once war begins, controlling its escalation becomes extremely difficult. Conclusion. The reality. No one talks about. So, here's the truth. The United States has overwhelming military superiority. It could dominate the air, control the sea, disrupt Iran's military infrastructure, and severely weaken Iran's ability to operate. But defeating Iran completely is another matter, because Iran's strategy isn't based on winning quickly. It's based on surviving, resisting, and enduring. Modern war isn't just about weapons. It's about resilience, strategy, politics, and time. The real question isn't just who would win militarily. It's who could endure the consequences longer. Because sometimes, victory isn't defined by destruction. It's defined by survival. And now we want to hear from you. Do you believe military strength alone determines victory? Or does endurance ultimately decide the outcome? Let us know in the comments. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to the GeoPulse, where we break down global power, geopolitics, and the forces shaping our world. Because understanding geopolitics isn't just about watching history, it's about understanding the future before it happens.